The FBI covered up the fact that there are audio recordings of Joe Biden and the whistleblower saying that there was a deal being done. We've got 17 audio recordings, 17 different phone calls Chuck Grassley tells us about, apparently coming from Burisma from Ukraine. 15 of these calls were recorded specifically with Hunter Biden, talking about these bribes, talking about these deals. And 2 of those calls were with the Vice President Joe Biden himself. But the FBI covered it up. Remember, to catch up on this, we had this battle over this document, and the FBI finally brought it over to Congress, and they showed it to James Comer, and they flashed it real fast, and then they brought it back and they flashed it again real fast, and they didn't give any possession of it. But what they flashed had major redactions on it. We thought, wow, wonder what could be redacted. Well, Chuck Grassley tells us it was a section that says that these audio recordings exist. And so I want to get some background on this before we jump into the clips. This is what the story tells us. Joe Biden allegedly paid $5 million by a Burisma executives as part of this bribery scheme. And they've got some more details on this. Apparently, it was $5 million by an executive of a Ukrainian natural gas firm called Burisma. And this came from a confidential human source telling this to the FBI in June 2020. The sources briefed Fox News on the contents of the FD-1023 form. The form was dated June 30th, and it is from an FBI interview with, quote, a highly credible CHS. This CHS detailed multiple meetings and conversations he or she had, with a top Burisma executive over the course of several years, starting in 2015. So it's one step removed, right? The source was speaking with the Burisma executive who was actually doing the deals with the Bidens. Fox News hasn't seen the form, but it was described. The form is used to gather information. The Burisma executive sought the advice of the confidential human source, who's another business professional, on gaining U.S. oil rights and getting involved with U.S. companies. So he's a liaison. The Burisma executive was speaking with the source to get advice on the best way to go forward in 2015-2016 when Joe Biden is the vice president. According to the form, the confidential human source said that Burisma, the executive, discussed Hunter's role on the board. The CHS questioned why the executive needed his or her advice in acquiring access to U.S. oil if Burisma had Hunter Biden on the board. He said, what are you talking to me for? You got Hunter on there. The Burisma executive said, well, Hunter Biden is dumb because he is dumb. He's not there for anything other than just influence because his daddy's the vice president. So the Burisma executives tells the source that Burisma had to pay the Bidens. He explained. He said, hey, well, I had to pay the Bidens because the Ukrainian prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, was investigating Burisma. He says, we can't enter the U.S. market when we're under investigation. The source detailed that conversation. He says, well, okay, why don't you pay the Bidens $50,000 each he says, just give them $50,000. That'll be enough, right? Burisma executive says, no, that's not it. No, it's not 50,000, bro. It's 5 million. He said, it's 5 million? Yeah, it's 5 million for one Biden, 5 million for the other Biden, he told the source. So the source said, according to the documents, 5 million payments appeared to be a retainer. The 5 million was a retainer. Another source called it a pay-to-play scheme. Source said Burisma executive told him he paid the Bidens through so many different bank accounts that investigators would not be able to unravel this for at least 10 years. All the different shell companies, they're not going to be able to find the money. The document then makes reference to, quote, the big guy, which many say is Joe Biden. The Burisma executive told the CHS that he, quote, didn't pay the big guy directly. Obviously not. This source has been used as a regular by the FBI since 2010, paid over about $200,000. And sources said the Burisma executive appears to be at a very, very high level of the company. One source thought it could be Mykola Zolchensky, which is the actual CEO, I believe, of the organization, okay? So the CEO of Burisma, or the founder, the head, is admitting he had to pay the Bidens $5 million each, and it had to go through massive different funds, right? Different bank accounts in order to cover it all up. Insane. Said that the name of the Burisma executive is also redacted in the document. So Biden has acknowledged that when he was vice president, he successfully pressured Ukraine to fire this guy, Viktor. Shokin was investigating Burisma. Hunter had an $83,000 a month contract with them. Vice president threatened to withhold $1 billion of aid if Shokin was not fired. He said, I said, you're not getting the billion. I'm going to be leaving here in, I think it was about 6 hours. I looked at them. I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor is not fired, you're not getting the money. So they fired him. Biden recalled telling then Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko. Biden recollected the conversation during an event. He said, well, son of a bee, he got fired. And they put in place someone who was really solid at the time. So now you can just connect it all back. Hunter is on the board of Burisma. He's not getting anything done unless he gets paid. He does get paid. Joe Biden puts pressure on the prosecutor who was investigating Mikolo. That prosecutor gets fired because the Bidens got paid. Trump wanted investigations into this, but they don't care about those types of crimes. They only care about Trump types of crimes. We now know that there was a lot more to this story, and Grassley comes out and explains this in an audio recording. And here is what he tells us on the steps of the Senate.
Last week, I came here to speak to my colleagues about the Biden administration and the FBI playing games with the American people by hiding the FBI-generated 1023 document.
We're going to try to keep the energy up here.
And the American people.
They hit the form.
Director Wray was going to be held in contempt for refusing to produce the 1023 that I told Chairman Comer about. And I think I had that first conversation with Chairman Comer about 3 weeks ago. Then instead of contempt, the FBI committed to showing the 1023 and related documents to the whole Congress. By the way, I thank Chairman Comer for his cooperation with me, and after the FBI committed to showing this document, they showed, but it didn't provide possession.
They didn't leave the document with Congress.
1023 to the House Oversight Committee last week.
They just flashed it.
And by the way, 1023 is unclassified.
Yeah, it is
so
unclassified.
Why shouldn't the entire country know about what's in this 1023?
You're right, Chuck.
As the public knows, that 1023 involves an alleged bribery scheme between then Vice President Biden, Hunter Biden, and a foreign national. The same allegations that Chairman Comer and I made public on May the 3rd of this year. And on the very same day that the FBI provided a redacted version of the 1023 to the House Oversight Committee, the Justice Department then announced that former President Trump had been indicted and charged with 37 crimes related to his alleged mishandling of classified records.
Amazing timing on that one. Well
done. Attorney General Garland signed off on prosecuting Trump for conduct similar to what Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton engaged in. Two standards of justice in this country will turn our constitutional republic upside down.
Into a joke.
Thanks to the political infections within the Biden Justice Department and the FBI, we were well along the road for that to happen. This senator will do all that he can to fight political infection in the Department of Justice.
All right, so that goes on for another 7 minutes or so. What we're going to do is read the press release because it's much faster. And this is what Grassley posted over on his Senate site. He said, last week I came to the Senate floor to give a speech about the Biden DOJ and the FBI. Says Director Wray was going to be held in contempt for refusing to produce the document. They just showed up, but they didn't provide possession. As the public knows, that 1023 involves a bribery scheme. Comer has been working on this for some time. Now, they announced this the same day they charged Trump, but Attorney General Garland signed off on prosecuting Trump for conduct very similar to what Joe Biden and Hillary did. Two standards of justice in this country will turn our constitutional republic upside down. And he says, with respect to the 1023 shown to that House committee, from what I've been told by folks who've reviewed it, it's filled with redactions. So Director Wray placed redactions on a document that is already unclassified. And more than that, the FBI made Congress review an unredacted, a redacted, unclassified document in a classified facility. So that goes to show you the disrespect the FBI has for Congress. And you, Chuck. On a previous time on the Senate floor, I asked my fellow senators, what's so unusual about an unclassified document being given to the public? When on May 18th of this year, there was leaked to the New York Times a classified document and even the name of a confidential human source. So we're in this kind of strange situation here. A classified document can be be leaked to the New York Times, but an unclassified document can't be made public to 300 million Americans? What? Accordingly, Chuck says, Congress still lacks a full and complete picture with respect to what the document really says. That's why it's important that the document be made public without unnecessary redactions for the people to see. But he says, now this is good. Chuck comes in, he says, now let me assist for the purposes of transparency. The 1023 produced to that House committee redacted reference that the foreign national who allegedly bribed Joe and Hunter Biden allegedly has audio recordings of his conversations with them. 17 total recordings. One more time. The FBI redacted the reference in that 1023 that the foreign national who allegedly bribed Joe and Hunter, so this would, in my opinion, be Mykola Zlochevsky, right? The man at the top of Burisma. He apparently, allegedly, has audio recordings of the conversations. 17 of them. So the whistleblower, the CHS doesn't have them. The person who recorded the calls is the person involved in the bribes. According to the 1023, the foreign national possesses 15 audio recordings of phone calls between him and Hunter Biden. According to the 1023 that the FBI tried to cover up and they redacted when they showed it to Congress, Chuck Grassley knows this. The foreign national possesses 2 audio recordings of phone calls between him and then VP Joe Biden. These recordings were allegedly kept as a sort of insurance policy for the foreign national in case he got into a tight spot, which he's in, unless Joe can cover this whole thing up. The 1023 also indicates that then VP Joe Biden may have been involved in Burisma employing Hunter. He probably called him up and said, he's the smartest man I know, and you better employ him or else you lose your billion. So Grassley says, as I've repeatedly asked since going public with the existence of the 1023, what, if anything, has the Justice Department and the FBI done to investigate this? The DOJ and the FBI must show their work. They no longer deserve the benefit of the doubt. No more good faith. It's clear that the DOJ and the FBI will use every resource to investigate candidate Trump, President Trump, and former President Trump. Based on the facts known to Congress, it's clear that the Justice Department will use every resource, but it's clear that the FBI haven't had nearly the same laser focus on the Biden family. He says that Jack Smith used a recording against Trump. Well, what's U.S. Attorney Weiss doing with respect to these alleged Joe Biden and Hunter Biden recordings that are apparently relevant to high-stakes bribery schemes? Are they working on that at all? Grassley says, getting a full and complete 1023 is critical. It's important for asserting constitutional oversight powers for an out-of-control executive branch drunk with political infection. Remember, Congress has received 1023s in the past, and they've been made public. So asking for this 1023 to be turned over to the American people to read is not unusual. Grassley finishes up, he says, Congress owes it to the American people and the brave and heroic whistleblowers to continue to fight for transparency in this matter and make this document public without unnecessary redactions. And Grassley leaves this final sentence very ominous. And this is the main climax of this whole piece. Chuck Grassley says, I want everyone to remember that I have read the unredacted version. I want everyone to remember, including you people at the FBI who keep trying to redact this stuff, I have read the unredacted version. I have knowledge about what's in that you keep trying to cover up. And so when you keep trying to cover it up, I'm going to come back out and tell you what I know is in it. And I know what is in it is there's 7 allegations that there are 17 recorded phone calls that somebody has in their possession. And we would venture to say it's Mykola Zlochevsky from Ukraine. So Grassley explains those audio recordings and they are a doozy. Now, Byron Donald weighs in on this massive double standard that exists and Biden being caught on tape. Here's what he said.
Look, I think everything that Senator Grassley says does pan out because the document does state that the Burisma executive actually has receipts. That's all it says, that he has information, but you just don't know what the information is. And then the other piece that definitely pans out is that they moved the money through several accounts that would take investigators 10 years to find. That is the modus operandi of the Biden family, whether the money comes from China, Romania, and now it's looking like Ukraine. They move it through all these LLCs, through all of these accounts, and it ends up in the hands of the family. And by the way, I will add this. Joe Biden likes to say that the rich need to pay their fair share. Well, hey, Joe, did you pay your taxes on that $5 million? I don't think you did.
I doubt it. That's a lot of taxes, especially at Joe Biden's tax rates. So I'm sure he doesn't even want to pay his own tax rates. So I'm sure that money is floating around somewhere in some foreign account somewhere that nobody's even paying attention to because they're too busy prosecuting Trump.